Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Split, the young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Bryan Cohen, the author of the Ted Saves the World series. That is Robert Scanlon, author of the Dreamer Chronicles. Maybe. Why? Why not?
Why?
Why are we saying why? It's because this week we are doing 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. But first, how you doing, Robert?
I'm doing. I've recovered from the experience of reading the selection. It was wonderful to move straight into reading 13 Reasons Why. Two books couldn't be more different. Of course, they're intended to be very different. And with similar reader rankings. So yeah, I'm feeling good, feeling on top of the world. How about you?
I feel good. I think that, winter is kind of drawing to a close, which I think, there's still snow left. There's no getting by the snow. But I think that things are looking up, though reading this book did not help with that.
Sorry. This would not be the spring is coming.
Yeah, this is definitely not the spring is coming book. This is like 50 years of winter. And I did like it. But let's talk about it. Let's do the usual summary, reader.
Really curious about the audiobook experience in this one. But yeah, lead ahead with the summary.
Ooh, it was really good. I think we'll talk. But the summary, reader, writer, takeaways, and then the prompt. Let's get into it. Clay Jensen never expected the tapes. 7 tapes with 13 stories told by Hannah Baker, Clay's crush and a victim to suicide. Each story holds a clue as to why his classmate ended her life, and Clay is one of the unknowing culprits. Only by listening to each of the tapes will Clay know the truth behind Hannah's life, Hannah's death, and the role he played in both. So, I find this book very sad and very important. It reminded me of the movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Requiem for a Dream, which is not a movie about suicide, it's a movie about drugs. But it's the kind of movie where you see it once and you're like, I never need to see it again because the images of that are burned into my skull of how painful and terrible and whatnot it is. And I think this is one of those kinds of art that everyone should read at least once, and I don't plan on reading it again, but I fully recommend it. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm totally with you. We're certainly not split on this one, Bryan, that's for sure. I like what you said about the movies. There are lists of movies that are too painful to watch again. Mm-hmm. And you can Google that because there are definitely those. I've not seen that one, so that's obviously one that I have to add to my queue. I probably would read the book again because I loved it so much. But you're right. I mean, you're loving it for awful reasons. It's a tale of cruelty and people not taking responsibility, including the girl who takes her own life. It's sad because you're hearing the story told through backstory of someone that you know has already taken their own life. The entire book is a suicide note. And so, that in itself is pretty heavy. And then when you cleverly intertwine that with Clay's unraveling of what went wrong in this girl's life and how unwitting was everybody around that, or even not necessarily so unwitting, but cruel in a deliberate way. And for me, it's a remarkable commentary on life, and I think should be required reading in schools for sure, reading groups for sure. I know not everybody likes it. I know some reviewers said, well, I'm a therapist and suicide should never be treated like this. BS. If this gets people talking, if this gets kids realizing that every action falls and lands on somebody in a way that they may not understand, if this gets people understanding that if they see sexual misconduct, they should report it, who cares whether it's an accurate portrayal or not? I mean, honestly.
No,
So,
seriously. And it's art.
It's
art, guys.
But it's good art. It's the type of art.
And it's good art.
That makes you uncomfortable. That makes you think, God, did I have an off-the-cuff nasty remark to somebody today? Do I really need to do those things? And we're all caught up in our own stuff. But I'm going a bit deep. Let's go back to the story.
No, it's okay. It's a good rabbit hole to go down to.
Yeah. I mean, there are two principal characters here, really. The story alternates between Clay and Hannah. And Hannah, Hannah, we only hear her voice from the audio tape, and in the text, this is italicized, so you always know when it's her speaking.
In the audiobook, it's two voices.
Great. This is one book that I think I would be fantastic on audio.
You'd love the audio. It was so good. And I'm pretty sure I'd heard the female narrator's voice in another book, and I already liked her. So.
Okay. I normally don't like audiobooks because they take me too long. And I've got other things to do. I listen to podcasts when I'm doing chores, whereas I read so fast, and it's my preferred thing to do, when I'm going to sleep or I've got a bit of time in between things, rather than listening. So, but this is one where when I was reading it, I was thinking, I hope Bryan's heard this in two voices because it would be magic.
Yep, and it was definitely very good. So moving on from that, I think one of my reader takeaways.
Yep.
The snowball effect aspect of the book and all the terrible things that Hannah was dealing with, I mean, that really brought on the tears. I mean, it's such a painful series of events. And I think Asher does a really good job of layering those one on top of the other.
Oh, yeah.
And you're experiencing it right along with Clay, which is such a brilliant conceit because it's so rare that the reader is exactly in the same position as the narrator.
Yes.
Because there's always something different. But in this, really, they're both in the same exact position.
Yes.
And the character is reacting in the ways that you would react to these things.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing the way he was able to do that.
Indeed. And you said that really well, that we're always in Clay's shoes. There's not much to anticipate. All you can anticipate is they're going to be each side of the cassette, and it's explained why, for those who don't know what a cassette tape is, it is explained why some of these older devices were used as items in the book. And in fact, the author notes, I don't know if you got them on the audiobook version.
No, I didn't.
The author notes are fantastic. They're really insightful. I'll tell you a bit about them in a moment because it relates to what I'm about to say next. Imagine that you're reading the story of the Titanic, and we all know how that ends, right? Everyone knows that the ship sinks and most of the people die. And so what's exciting about that? But James Cameron managed to take that into a really much loved and much adored movie. Parodied too, but he made the love story the focus of that. And so there's a love story at the focus of this. There is very explicit sexual content, so definitely not for anyone under 16. There is a rape scene. I won't give away lots more than that because it would spoil the story. But imagine that it's being taken through the story of the Titanic, but imagine what you're doing is you're going through a theme park and you're actually inside the Titanic, and you've got one of those audio devices you're holding to your head, and you're going from cabin room to cabin room being told the story of the people that were in it and then what happened, and then you move to a different section. All of a sudden there's these generators that start making some rumbling and scraping noises, so you're really starting to experience what it might have been like on the Titanic as it hit that iceberg, and then the thing violently tilts like a simulator and you suddenly hear these screams coming through. To me, that was what it was like reading this book. I mean, you know the inevitable. You know that at some point we're going to get to the fact that she's going to utter her last words. And you don't know how, and I'm not going to say anything about that because I'm not. But you're still excited to know. You want to read. It's a book I loved coming back to. I couldn't wait to see how the story unfolded. I mean, it's masterful.
It really is. And I mean, from a first-time author, first book. Yeah. Whew. That's crazy.
To be admired. And, this is a challenging thing to undertake. intertwining those two voices without losing you, the reader, in either of them.
Yeah.
It does take a little adjustment when you're reading it text-wise. Maybe not so much
Because it's very different from most. It's very
different.
different from most books. Yeah.
Multiple points of view are normally handled in big chunks at a time, but this is sometimes one sentence, one word even sometimes. So very clever.
Very, very clever.
Should we move into from the writer's perspective?
Yeah, let's talk about it as a writer's. I mean, he was willing to do something so unique with this story, and I think it just shows how important originality is to not only the idea of the story, but actually the way that the story is told. I think it's a huge part of what makes this book so special.
In the author notes, Jay Asher says that he tried writing it both voices concurrently because that was how in his head the story unfolded. And as you and I have said as readers and listeners, you really feel you're with Clay as he hears these tapes. And so he wanted to write it like that, and he started doing it, and it was way too hard. So he actually wrote Hannah's story completely first. Then he wove in Clay's experiences and events as they go through, which then meant he had to go back and alter some of Hannah's narrative.
To make it work.
And in particular, he wasn't sure where Clay himself would appear in the tapes as he was writing it. So that was really interesting to hear from a writer's perspective how he dealt with putting that together, because most of us would assume that you probably, you wrote it as it is read. But no, not at all. And that in itself would be challenging. So kudos.
Super cool. Very cool.
What did you think from a writer's perspective?
I think, I want to focus on Clay and Hannah.
Yep.
They're both interesting, independently of being in the story. They're both interesting. It wouldn't work otherwise. And also, the other characters are interesting, and you're seeing this double perspective of them. You're seeing how Hannah saw them, how Clay sees them. It makes you really think about like the almost double lives that people lead. Super cool. Just... I think that it would have worked if it was just Clay and Hannah that were interesting, but because they're the big focus. But I mean, everyone's interesting in their own way in this book. So big, very cool. And
not only that, they don't. Even though you think, well, okay, a character appears once because they're one of the reasons why. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes they make multiple appearances and from different angles, and sometimes from Clay's perspective, and sometimes again from Hannah's perspective. So the amount of foreshadowing and weaving in things through was just beautiful. I couldn't understand why people... Some of the most helpful reviews are actually not terribly flattering. And I thought... And it gets... a 4.3 average when the selection gets a 4.4, and oh man, what's up with our world? Maybe it's a tough subject. The writing is
a tough subject. I'm sure that's part of it.
And it's a hard book to read. You really do have to. You can't read it on the bus. It's not.
No.
You're switching between these 2 points of view, and Hannah is, she's a distressed girl. She has a lot to say. She's an unreliable narrator, I think, as well. And she doesn't take steps to do anything about her own situation, but blames others a lot. But hey, that's what happens for people who are suicidal. They can't do anything. And the fact that maybe the guilt trip of should I have said something? Should I have done something? Have you ever lost anyone to suicide, Bryan?
I have not, but I definitely have friends who have attempted suicide, and it's very scary. And
you often don't know what's been going on inside. I mean, it does not present from the outside. And I've lost some very close friends, and including someone who I actually was a counsellor for, and they committed suicide. Not quite some time after, but I'm pretty certain that I would know what some of the issues were. And you just think, why couldn't I have done something about that? So if this book stimulates even thoughts about how we respect, treat, love, admire, relate with others, then it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah.
What do you think
I
about it as a
agree.
Selena Gomez movie, though?
Is that what's happening?
Her production company bought the rights.
But she won't necessarily star in it, will she?
Apparently, her and Jay see eye to eye on how Hannah should be in the book. So,
Hey, well,
who knows?
I'm all about actors stretching.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I mean, if she wants to give it a go, I'm all for it. I mean, depending on how they depict the movie,
That's
she
right.
could just be a voice
She
on a
could.
tape.
She could.
So,
Yeah. Or ghostly images from minor flashback scenes. Who knows? It's
Mm-hmm.
a very difficult thing to film, I think.
yeah, that'll be interesting to film for sure.
Because it kind of all takes place in one night, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it's a well-made play, essentially.
Yes. Well said.
Yeah. I stole it from plenty of drama teachers. So, last point, Asher. Really, I mean, it's short. It's there's nothing wasted, no wasted words. It's succinct.
Yes.
It's I loved that aspect of it because it came to do what it came to do. It did it, and then it left, and it made a real impression.
I agree. I totally. Well said.
Yeah.
Writers should read this, if only to understand.
Right, definitely
what can
writers
be
should
done
read
with
this.
a story.
Oh yeah, man. I got a takeaway. How about I take it away?
Take it away.
So I think the originality is so important. Be original. You're going to have people tell you to change things, whether it be an editor at a publishing company or your beta readers or your readers. But you should use your voice how you want to use it. I remember back in a fiction class in college, I had this wild story that I had to print off lots and lots of pages because it was integral. There was a character in it who was writing a timeline of his or her life. I can't remember if it was a male or female. And as they got older, they would change the timeline. They would like erase certain parts of it and make new important things the main focus. Mm-hmm. And so each little parts of the story, there would be there would be a part where you could see the slightly erased thing that was there before, and like it would change as the story went along. And it was probably weird and crazy, but almost no one in my class gave me any props for the originality. And I think that, I think I was right to do it that way because it was something totally weird and totally outside the box. Yes. And I think you should always permit yourself to do that. And Asher did that wonderfully in this book.
Yeah, and he did it with his first story. And I think that's the amazing thing is because we're kind of all taught as writers to get the fundamentals of story structure right before you go experimental. But there's always going to be an outlier. And this has got to be one of them. Shall I go a takeaway?
Do it.
I think that deep themes are revealed through a well-told story. Deep themes are not preached. So we've reviewed Before I Fall, for example, which has deep themes, many of which are probably similar to 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
And yet neither story feels like I'm being preached to. I don't feel like I'm being told suicide is bad, not helping people is bad. There's a little bit of the obvious thing of, sexual abuse and sexual violence is bad. Well, okay, that's a given. You'd read that in any book.
It's a given, yeah.
But I really didn't feel like it was. There's nothing in this book that's shoved down your throat. It's all done via Clay's emotions, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. Won't work without a good story.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You got another takeaway?
I do. Somewhat related, if you need to tackle a tough issue, I think you should be relentless in your portrayal. He didn't pull any punches.
Oh, no.
He was out there, like you said, there's the sexual portion of it. And if he wanted to make this a PG-13 kind of thing, and I don't see how he would have done it without hiding some stuff, without taking things away. So I think he was smart to do it the way he did it. And when you're tackling a tough subject, in the headlines kind of subject, don't hold back. Go all in, because people need to see it for its full effect. And you're going to be sacrificing something if you don't go all in with it.
Well said. Well said.
Hey.
Put it on the line. You know, I know it's similar to what we said, I think, a couple of weeks back about raising the stakes. You know, so you can raise the stakes by making threats to personal life, or the world itself about to crumble, or a universe disappearing, or a race against time, or finding a murderer. But here the stakes are raised because it's all about how intensely personal things can get. And that's another way to raise the stakes. So yeah, well said.
Yeah,
go
for sure, for sure.
Hey, we should get Jay Asher and Kira Cass on the show together. I think it'd be.
I would love to have any author on this show
other than us. I'd love people to listen to the show.
Yeah, and we all appreciate you listeners, of course. In fact, we appreciate you so much. I'm going to give you a prompt of the week. How do you feel about that, Robert?
I think everybody deserves a prompt of the week. Go for it.
Great. I'll give it to him. If you could mine some tragedy in your own life to turn into a book, what would you choose and why? How do you think your experience would give you the knowledge you need to do it justice? So, yeah. Get real sad, Robert, because some sad things you can pull from. Oh.
I'm going to write a good book.
Oh, my gosh. If you have a response to that prompt, you can post it on thesplitbookreviews.com. You can put a comment on the YouTube video on the Split YouTube channel. While you can't post the story on iTunes, we'd love it if you subscribed so that you can get our new episodes every Wednesday. I'd love to see a response to this, because people, write what you know, but people like to write the good parts of what they know sometimes and not the bad. So it's smart. It's smart if you want to tackle something tough to go back to when you tackled something tough.
Yeah, indeed. And, look, make us cry in the comments.
Make us cry in the comments. There's nothing we love more than crying. So this has been another episode of The Split. Next week, we're taking on Beautiful Creatures by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll.
Looking forward to it.
Really looking forward to it myself. The book gets beat up on a little bit, so I'm interested to see if we like it or if one of us likes it and one of us doesn't, and we live up to the Split name, which we've only done a couple of times. But yeah, please, if you have a chance, go on iTunes and give us a review. It helps us to get discovered so that we can reach more readers and just grow this bigger and bigger, because we love talking about this and helping readers find new books and helping writers find new ways to improve their craft.
Indeed. And thank you to everybody who has made contributions and suggestions so far. A big shout out to all of you. So great stuff.
Definitely. For Robert Scanlon, I'm Bryan Cohen. Check out The Split on thesplitbookreviews.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And have a happy week.
Have a happier week than we've had reading this book. Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to the Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.